Welcome to our webinar about being laid off. I have to say I'm sorry if you have to listen to this because you've been laid off recently, but if it makes you feel any better, most of us have been there before. So this is to give you a few pointers about what to do, how to cope, and how to make sure that you get that next great job. I'm Judy McKay, and I'll be your presenter. So I'm going to talk about 4 general areas here. One is making sure that you give yourself some time to process. This is a bad thing to get laid off. It really is. It's a terrible feeling. And it takes some time to honestly just understand it and absorb it and be ready to move on. And while we're thinking about how to move on, we need to decide where we want to go and avoid going where we don't want to go. We'll talk about getting ready for those applications and interviews and also getting that next best job. What is the job that we really want? Our next job should be the one that is a great job. So how can we use this, honestly, as an advantage? One of the things I find that's most misunderstood about being laid off is the impact it is on you. It can be very difficult to take on. Sometimes people feel like, oh, well, the business didn't want me, or that you did something wrong, or that you just weren't well suited for the job. That's not it at all. And it's really important that you understand this is a business decision. Okay, it was purely a business decision. It's not a personal one. It's not that you were targeted. It's that the business had to do a reduction. All right, and for whatever reasons they needed to do a reduction, sales are down, they lost a big project, whatever's happened here, it's a business decision. So that's rule number 1. Keep that in mind. It's not a personal decision. Now, if there were other people that were affected by it, it's a really good idea to meet up with them because honestly, there's a little bit of misery loves company there, but everybody's kind of in that same boat and it gives you a chance to talk through it and understand how everybody else is feeling as well. And honestly, I think it helps. I think it really does help. But also, don't forget the people that did not get laid off, the people that were not affected by it, because honestly, they're feeling pretty bad too. Remember, they're still your friends. And they're not feeling so great about being the ones that didn't get laid off. Be sure you touch base with them too. Go out to dinner. Make them pay because they're the ones that are employed. When I used to work in Silicon Valley, that was the standard. Whoever was employed is the one who had to pay for lunch because there were so many layoffs and so many people were unemployed off and on. You knew it was going to be your turn at some point in time. So the guy who's employed pays. The guy who's unemployed gets a free lunch. It's a great deal. Regrouping. This is a chance to actually sit down and think about it. What do you want to do next? Is this a time when you should be thinking about changing careers or changing your path? Maybe you've always been a functional tester, manual testing. Maybe this is a time where you go, you know what? I really want to move into automation. Or, I've always been interested in performance testing and I never had an opportunity to do it at that current job. So think about it. Is this the time when you really should be changing careers? When you should be thinking about, maybe it is time to do something different. A number of people I've talked to over the years that have actually had a layoff occurrence, that has been a big door opening for them. That's been an opportunity that made them say, you know what? I don't even like doing this. I want to do something different. So take that opportunity. Sit down and think about it. Is this a good time to change? Maybe you even want a different industry entirely. Maybe you say, you know what, I'm tired of software testing. I would like to be a developer. Or I would like to go be a magician. Just something radically different to what you've been doing. Maybe this is your chance to take a different path. Now, you may have some realities you have to deal with too. Maybe time to pull up your socks, get on with it. Job hunting is a lot of work. So get ready for this. Prepare your resume. Now, some places when they do a layoff, they'll also do an outsource service, which will actually help you with getting your resume updated, all those kinds of things. If they have that, absolutely take advantage. It's a great opportunity, and they'll also help you with looking for good job fits and such. But any way you look at it, get your resume up to date. It probably isn't. It usually isn't, right? If you're not looking for a job, why would you keep it updated? It's a lot of work. Practice interviewing. And this is particularly important right now because you're a little shell-shocked. You're not in a great state of mind to be interviewing. So it's really good to work through with somebody else on some practice questions. My favorite being, of course, why did you leave your last job? So make sure that you are interviewing well, that you're coming across professionally, and that you've kind of got the bad stuff out of there. One of the things that I always look for when I'm interviewing someone who has been laid off is, are they resentful? Because that resentment can carry forward, and I don't need that. So I want to make sure that that resentment is gone, that they understand it was a business decision, they weren't personally targeted, and that's just the way things go. It's really important that you come across as ready to work, everything's straight in your head, you know what you want to do, you're ready to move forward. That's the way you need to be sure that you're presenting yourself. And then the other item is assess your situation, because it's always different, right? You may say, oh my gosh, I need a job and I need a job tomorrow. Any job, I don't care what I'm doing. I'll go bag groceries, anything, absolutely anything. Or maybe you say, you know what, this is a good time. I'm going to take 3 months off. I'm going to wait for the perfect fit. Now, depending on what your package may be when you were laid off, you may have that luxury. You may have several months of pay in the bank. Great. Take your time. Really sit back, think about it. What do you want to do? What would be the perfect job for you? Again, like we talked about, maybe you do some adjustment here. Maybe this is when you think about it and say, I'd really like to do something different. Do you want to spend some time on education? Do you want to update your skills? Now, in a lot of cases, in a layoff kind of situation, you may have been with a company for a period of time and your skills may be a bit out of date with what's going on in the world. For example, AI. Are you up to date on AI? People may ask those questions in interviews. What about the security, cybersecurity? Are you up to date on that? So it's a good time to think about, should I spend a few months on education rather than a few months on job hunting? And this also is a big factor with time of year. It's always very difficult to look for a job at the end of the year with Christmas and holidays and all that going on. So think about that as well. Is this a good time to hunt for a job, or would I be better off to actually just go ahead and invest in myself? Now, some do's and don'ts here. I'll start with the don'ts. Don't let desperation drive you in the wrong direction, where you jump back in and you get exactly what you didn't like in your last job. If you can't afford to wait, do. Wait for a good fit on a job, because jobs are long-term. Well, we hope they're long-term. So you want to make sure that what you're doing is going to be the right thing. Now, I say that with a grain of salt, though, because if you are in a situation where you have got to get a job tomorrow, fine, take whatever it is, because you can always quit. So even if it's something that's not perfect for you, maybe you go, well, you know what, it'll do for now, and I'll work it as long as I can, and then I can always change later. But ideally, you wait. You don't take something out of desperation. You take something because you want it. Now, don't let resentment, or desperation for that matter, leak through in the interview. Make sure that you are honest. I've interviewed people and they are really desperate. But as a result of that, I don't feel like I can trust their answers. So you want to make sure that you're not coming across that way, because the interviewer is going to go, yeah, I'm not really sure about that. So be sure that you come across as professional. You've absorbed it, you've taken it on board, you're ready to move forward. Don't try and fit a job that just doesn't fit. It's just not the right thing to do. Don't try to stretch your skills. I mean, it's the same thing you'd always do on any interview, right? Be honest. If the job is for a performance tester and you've never done it, yeah, don't lie about your skills. Don't ever do that. Don't interview too early. Give yourself some time. Now, some people will say, oh my gosh, I got to get out there. I'll do it tomorrow. It's too early, really. I mean, at least give yourself a week to think about it and absorb it and kind of get your head around it. As soon as you jump out too early, you may not do well in the interview that was really for the job you wanted. Think that through a bit. You can always postpone it. You know, if somebody says, hey, I'd like to interview you tomorrow, and you're not quite ready, oh, I'm sorry, I've got a doctor's appointment, I can't move it. Could we move the interview? Move it out to the point where you're comfortable and you're ready to do it. Don't lose faith in yourself. You're unemployed. Okay, we've all been there, as I said. It's not a bad thing. It happens to everybody. So don't lose faith in yourself. You weren't targeted. It's just one of those things that happens. Trust yourself. You've got skills. You're probably a great employee. You care enough to listen to this webinar, so you're out there, you're looking. Don't lose faith in yourself. Don't undersell your accomplishments, and of course, don't oversell. But make sure that you're honest about it. This is what I've done. I'm proud of what I've done. Maybe it didn't work out with that company. Maybe things didn't end well, but I still did good things there. right? So be proud of those accomplishments. Don't ever say things that are negative about a company, about your former manager. You don't know who knows who and who's actually going to look at it and say, oh, yeah, but I know your manager and I know what they think. Or I used to work for that company 5 years ago and I thought they were great. So be careful with that. Even though you may be somewhat resentful, don't let that come out. Now, some of the do's. So absolutely be honest about what has happened. There was a layoff. You were included in it. People may ask, well, was it the first wave? Was it the second wave? Was it the third wave? Because that's always indicative of basically how valuable the skills were to the company. But be honest about it. They're going to find out. So don't try and say, oh, no, I quit of my own volition, when they know you got laid off. That just makes you look dishonest. And also be honest that it was a shock. You weren't expecting it. You weren't planning to make a move. I respect that in people. When I've interviewed them and they've said, I was really happy there. I was excited about my project. Things were going really well. I was really surprised that I was laid off. Great. That's perfectly reasonable. And that's actually what I want to hear, is that you were happy. You were doing things that you liked. You were enjoying your job. It wasn't a situation where you just hated the job or you hated the people you worked with. Or if you did, don't say that. Take it positively, right? If someone has a positive reflection of the company that laid them off, that's a sign of maturity. That's a really good thing in an interview. Be positive about your skills and your abilities. Make sure that you emphasize that you do have a lot to offer. But don't put it in, well, I had a lot to offer. I don't know why they picked me, because that gets back to that kind of resentful thing. Be sure it's, yes, I have things to offer, and I'd like to bring them to your company. Remember, layoffs are not uncommon. It happens to everybody. It's not just you. You're not the one that was targeted. This is definitely just what happens in business, particularly these days. And it's a really good idea to get together with other people who are also seeking jobs. And that's for a lot of reasons. One is just some camaraderie, but also because they know what jobs are out there. If everybody's looking, you'll find places that are looking for ads. In fact, I just hired somebody yesterday, as a matter of fact, and said, I know that their company's been going through layoffs. And I said, so who would you recommend that you've worked with? Who's there that is really good? Right? So that's a good opportunity, right, for people to bring in other people off a bad situation. So keep in touch. Have lunch with those folks. Better yet, have lunch with somebody who's employed so they pay for it, and then have lunch with those folks. But you will really get a lot of self-assurance that way. You'll also get a little bit of commiseration, and hopefully you get lunch out of the deal. So now what? Well, you've got to think about the immediate future, but thinking a bit further on here, right? So the first one is deal with the immediate issues of income requirements. Obviously, you've lost your job. Now, if you've got 10 months of severance pay, I'm so jealous, number one. But great, you got a lot of time. You don't really have to jump in and worry about that. Whereas my very first company went bankrupt and owed us back pay even. And in that situation, you're not in the, gee, I'll just sit around and think for a while. You're in the, I got to do something. Be realistic. If you don't need to panic, don't panic. Take the time. Take the opportunity, really. Get your resume up to date. Absolutely. Practice interviewing, as I mentioned. Apply for everything that looks like a possible fit. Now, there's a couple reasons for this. It's kind of a cast the net wide, because you never know who's interested and who's going to be hiring. But it also gives you an opportunity to investigate some other areas that you might not have gone for before. So again, take the layoff as an opportunity. Now I have a chance to sit and look around, and maybe it's a job I wouldn't have quit, but maybe it was a job I wasn't really happy with. Opportunity. Let's see what's out there. Tap your friends and colleagues. Don't forget to update LinkedIn if you're on LinkedIn, or if you're not on LinkedIn, get on LinkedIn. But you can put up there looking for work, or I think it's called something like that. But that's not a bad way either, to just kind of get that notice out there and get it across your contacts. So those are the immediate things. Now in the next month or so, compare your skills to the skills of the people that were not laid off, the people that they kept. Why? Why did they keep those people? Are they more marketable? Are they more fitted for the way the company's going to go? Why are they keeping those folks? And this is a really important thing to think about, because it lets you know if you might be weak in some areas. And if so, great, those are the areas that you need to shore up. For example, I've been in situations where the layoff concentrated on all of the manual testers. and the automators weren't touched. And you go, okay, which skill is valued more by that company? Well, it was the automation skills. Not saying that that's right or wrong, but that was clearly the more valued skill. So, good to know, right? If I want to beef up my resume and I want to do some education on the side, automation is clearly a place where I should be targeting. Micro-credentials are a great way to get a quick hit on an education. It gives you basically a bite-sized chunks of some topic. For example, AI. For example, API testing. Things like that where you think, I don't really know much about it, but it will give me enough information to be able to talk intelligently in an interview and to know if this is something that's interesting and something that I want to look into more. So micro-credentials, not a huge investment in time, but a good way to kind of, again, a bit of a broader net to say, what's out there? What is interesting? For example, I love cybersecurity stuff. I think that's fascinating. Not something I've ever done, honestly. Not something I'm good at or have been trained in. But if I were unemployed tomorrow, that's where I'd go, I've always liked it. I've always been interested in it. Maybe this is something that I should target. So that's one way, the micro-credentials. They give you a little quick look. And most of the micro-credentials that are offered by AdSQA are couple hours, 3 hours maybe, something like that. You get enough of an exposure to say, okay, this is something I'd like to pursue, or it does not interest me at all. So take some courses is the other one and get some certifications. Now, with AdSQA, the certifications are the longer ones. Those are the multi-day course things where you would actually go like to get the ISTQB foundations or ISTQB test analyst or test manager, those things. Those are multi-day courses, so it's a larger investment in time and sometimes in money, although you can get some online courses that are pretty inexpensive. And again, there's a list of accredited training providers on AdSQA's site. But you can kind of look at, you think, maybe you took the micro-credentials for API testing and you went, interesting. I'd like to learn more about test automation. Okay, let me see if there's any certifications in test automation. Well, there are. Great, this is something that I'm willing to invest more in because now I've gotten a little bit of a taste for it and I like it. Do some research into new technologies like AI, for example. That's on everybody's mind right now. Do you know anything about it? Can you talk about it intelligently? Do you know the pros and the cons? So just kind of getting your feet wet in there, but get some information on it. Also, really important is to keep up with other people in the industry. Stay in contact with them, talk to them, find out what's going on, find out what they're finding interesting. These are both for the people that were also laid off, people that are employed, people that are around, right? They can kind of help steer you in the right direction. And then if we look a little longer in the future, and say maybe in a year, take a critical look at your skills and interests. Is there anything about you that's holding you back? Are there things where you really feel like you need to break into that? For example, if you've always been a test analyst and now you're thinking, man, I really need to get into automation, but I don't know anything about programming. I have no programming skills. This is going to be a long-term thing. Okay, well, maybe this is the time where you say, you know what? I'm going to take some programming classes at the local college. I'm going to start learning these skills. So that's when you take up those kinds of things, right? Longer term, maybe in 4 years, I'm going to be a really good test automator because I'm going to first of all learn programming, and then I'm going to learn these different automation languages, and then I'm going to be really ready to use my skills. So think about that longer term. Where do you really want to go? Remember, your career is a long-term thing. So if you think, 4 years, that's going to take forever. Really? If it's 4 years out of 40, not really that much time, is it? Also, adjust your career objectives accordingly. You may look at your skills and go, you know what? I really don't want to manage people. Okay, that's a perfectly honest thing to say. Then probably going to have to stay technical. Probably going to have to go that path. So how do I grow those skills so that I can advance and still have advancement opportunities, but not be forced into a management chain? Or you go the other way and say, you know what? I really like to tell people what to do. Excellent, and good luck in management because they never do what you tell them to. Okay, well then maybe I need to be looking at some management courses, looking at some opportunities. How can I become a lead in some areas? How can I do that and expand my skills? So again, this is a time to take a good long-term look at where you are. Now, future-proofing is very difficult in our industry because things change so fast. And honestly, the best way to future-proof is to always stay current, always be learning, be in this continuous learning mode all the time. And this is where the micro-credentials come in really handy, because you don't have to make a big investment in time, but you can say, you know what, this new thing just came out. I don't know anything about it, but I can look at this micro-credential and see what it is. And then if I'm interested in it, great, I can look into it further. But it's a great way to kind of dip your feet in, see if it's something that you're interested in. Future-proofing in our industry is a lot to do with being able to talk the talk until you can get involved in it somewhere, because you can do an awful lot of book learning about things like API testing, right? I can learn all about how to do it, how to approach it, but until I've actually got some APIs to really test and to really apply my skills, it's hard to really put it on your resume. So what I want to do is have that training done so when I get the opportunity, I can jump on it, and then I'll be able to help keep building my skills. But we always have to be looking at that. We always have to be thinking about our skills. But it's great to kind of sit back and say, where do I want to go? What skills do I need? Be sure you adjust your expectations with what you like to do. Don't decide to do something because people say you should or because you feel that's the only option open to you. What do you really like to do? And follow that, because you're going to be a heck of a lot happier in your long-term job. And everybody's going to like you better because you're going to do a better job at it. So what do you really like to do? Be honest. I mean, personally, I love to program. I just love to program, but I don't want to do it full-time. Tried that. I was a developer for a while. I didn't like it. I didn't like just heads down, sitting at my desk, typing on the keyboard all day. Apparently, I'm just too much of a social butterfly. But what I love is test automation, because it gives me a bit of both. I get to program and I get to test. And I like doing both of those things. But be realistic. What do you really like to do? And then create a long-term learning plan. How do I get there? What is my long-term plan? It may very well include college or university courses. It may include online stuff. It may include certifications, micro-credentials. Any of those things can easily be a path to where you want to get to. Seize this as an opportunity. This is your time to really stop and take a deep breath and say, where do I want to go? And am I happy in what I do? And how do I get to where I want to be? So I hope this has been helpful. SQA has a lot of courses, a lot of micro-credentials, things that you can look at, and some white papers, documents, syllabi that you can read through. There's a lot of learning material available, some of it for free. So take a look. Build your career. You'll get through it. We all do. But hopefully you get through it for the better. And hopefully what's on the other side is a better career, better opportunities, and a better future. Thank you very much.